Kiki ma. We are back with Masters of Horror, a co-production of Cult Film Showdown and No Pants Productions. We are here talking about
The insidest joke you're going to hear all day.
This is Jim Cotta. I'm hosting this series of looks at the anthology series from 2005-2006 called Masters of Horror. I am joined by Jocular Jack Hall.
Is ki ma. Is that how you clear your throat before the show? Or
that is the sound of Jason Voorhees coming to get you. That is actually what it the sound that most people think is like is ki ma.
Yeah, well, sure it is.
Yeah.
Either way, does it clear your throat?
It gets it's like a vocal exercise. It calms my voice and gets my right tenor for the work ahead.
The work ahead, which is talking Masters of Horror. But
That's
not
right.
until you introduce the last guy.
That's right. We also have Nick Boxer with us.
Hey, yeah, before that intro, I thought I knew what we were doing here. Now I have no idea.
Well, Masters of Horror. This we're on episode 3 of season 1 of Masters of Horror. And if you're watching along, if you're in the US, you can watch Masters of Horror on Tubi. And I'm sure that some of them are floating around YouTube. I'm sure they were all released on DVD. So hopefully you can track down these and start watching ahead. They're about 50 minutes an episode, so just slightly longer than one of our episodes. The episode 3 of season 1 is called Dance of the Dead, and Jack's going to tell us about the Masters of Horror involved in this project.
Yeah, this is a very interesting one. I mean, when you talk about we're talking about Masters of Horror, and when we talk about it, there's only a few guys who I think have had as much influence on the last, 50 years or so of horror as the gentleman who directed this episode. And that's Toby Hooper. Of course, well known for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, groundbreaking film. Someday we're going to have to talk a little bit about where Leatherface fits in the kind of the rankings of horror icons. Funhouse, another one he did.
Poltergeist.
Poltergeist. He has the directing credit on Poltergeist. A lot of controversy about whether or not he or Spielberg actually directed that one.
He directed it.
I think so too. Life Force, a wonderful remake of the 1970, I think it was 1979 Toolbox Massacre. He did a remake in the early 2000s that was fantastic.
Toolbox Murders.
Toolbox Murders. What did I say?
You said the Toolbox something.
I think I said Toolbox Massacre.
Close enough. I'll see
but
both.
He's not the only master here. Richard Christian Matheson is the son of the Richard Matheson, and he did the script for this. Richard Matheson, best known, of course, for I Am Legend, but I mean, he had Stir of Echoes and about 16 episodes for Twilight Zone. I think it was 16 episodes he did.
Wow.
Real Steel is a movie based on one of his properties from Twilight Zone. So, I mean, Richard Christian Matheson is more of a. He's written over 100 short stories and stories. I mean, he's prolific. He hasn't really got anything as well known as his father, but he's a prolific writer. And so, I mean, when we talk about, kind of the first couple episodes, we were judging whether or not you would consider this to be, is this guy a master of horror, or is he just a director of horror? I think there's no doubt that we have a master of horror in this one, in Toby Hooper. Now, is it his best work? Discuss.
Well,
Well,
let's
I
not
think we're
skip
missing a
that.
master.
Yeah, I was gonna say we have another master of horror involved in this.
There's another master horror there. I mean, Robert Englund. I mean, you can't deny his influence.
No,
Even without
I figured you would in the introductions would mention him, and we should mention, or sorry, and not in the introductions, in the as you described, Nick, is you kind of break down the plot. I thought you would bring him up there, but you're right, he is another master, and even Billy Corgan did the music for this episode, from Smashing Pumpkins. I wouldn't necessarily call him a master of horror, but I mean, it's certainly a massive name and shows the amount of respect that this series was getting.
He didn't phone it in either. He was right there.
Although, in describing the plot of this movie, is the mention of Robert Englund necessary at all to describe what the hell's going on in this movie?
I challenge you to describe what happened in this movie-ette.
I'll take that challenge. This movie takes place, I think, in a post-apocalyptic world. Where
Always a success when you start with "I think."
Well, the world is obviously dying from some sort of radioactive thing going on. You know, there's fallout coming from the sky that's dissolving people. The government is obviously shut down. The youth are running wild, doing drugs because, you know, they don't have that long to live. So we pick up in a small cafe, and these young hooligans sort of invade it, and the young waitress is smitten with our handsome young man, and she's stolen away to go to the evil big city for a night of debauchery, I think. And once they get there, there's Robert Englund running a club and somehow making the dead dance using some sort of combination of drugs and electricity. When the young girl's mother comes and follows them to save her, we get a twist and a moral plot that cowardice never pays.
He did it with no Robert Englund.
That's nice. That's good.
I mean,
Well,
Robert Englund plays
Robert
the MC
Englund's
in the club.
in this, but you know, he's just being Robert Englund, so it's not really a huge thing.
He has so much fun in this. I mean,
oh yeah, no.
I mean, not only is he so great at playing these over the top, big personality, creepy characters, but there's a bit where he's the MC of this show, the Dance of the Dead show, and it's like a burlesque kind of thing. Like there's a band, and then like the main attraction is the Dance of the Dead, and there's a point where he introduces the dance, and then and there's a girl giving him a BJ while he's watching the show, just like off stage, or he might actually be on the corner of the stage.
I also think the whole thing with him coughing up blood during the whole thing might have just been an improv thing. Just to give him like an extra like couple minutes on stage screen time, because I mean that didn't go anywhere. Oh, I have no idea what was going on with the blood thing. Period. I mean,
well,
people were drinking it, people were stealing it.
The blood thing kind of became a MacGuffin because we're introduced to the bad guys when they they shake down an older couple and they steal a bag. They steal a quart of blood from the woman, and they got to sell the blood to Robert Englund. But it's it is just a plot device. It doesn't pay off any further than that.
Well, I think I mean, I think one of my big problems with this episode was, and I think we've already kind of covered this without saying it specifically, is the rules of the world aren't very well explained.
No.
You know, like okay, this you're doing this. I sort of understand why. Maybe I understand why. Then there's this thing, what they call it, the Blitz or something like that, that made people to made them either killed them or just deformed them, I guess. And who came that? It was a terrorist attack or something, maybe. Um, you
I think
know,
they just say it's the enemy. Like they say there was a war, but they don't get into any detail of who the war was with. Or
no, no. Then there's the whole thing with the zombies who are burned, and I'm like, why? Like that's never explained except for the fact that they thought it would look cool. Like I don't know.
I thought they just sort of wore out their usefulness. That they've been dancing so long that they couldn't be
Well,
reinvigorated to dance any longer.
yeah,
They
because
never.
they're. Go ahead.
Well, they never really explained that though.
I mean, what they do explain is that there was this. So there was this stuff that was dropped. It was a poison. It did scar some people, but it kill. But like a lot of people died eventually from it. So there may be some like how much exposure you got or something. That's not clear. But they say that these it had first happened to soldiers, and the soldiers would die but stay on their feet. And whenever there was any kind of repetitive sound, they would kind of herky jerky it. There's not zombies in the classical sense because they don't move without like someone moving them, or without like I said, a sound that makes
They
them
can't
move.
seem to stand by themselves or anything.
No, like they're not a moving around zombie. They're not trying to bite people or anything like that. They're just you know dead people who are still standing,
Yeah, but they
essentially.
do seem to. They do seem to when they're getting burned. They were trying to bite. So I'm like, do they want flesh or do they like what's going on
Yeah,
there?
yeah. It's excellent question. Really excellent question. maybe
So,
maybe Nick can take that one.
what? No, I'm more confused now than I went in. So it wasn't the electrical prods that was made causing them to dance. It was the music.
Well, it was because it originally said that the
What?
soldiers would move when there was music or when there was like sound. But I mean, I think the electrical prod is to keep them at the center of the stage, or just make them more herky jerky. Um, but yeah, again, like not they didn't nail that down with.
And that's the other thing. I mean, Robert Englund's MC characters bringing these guys to life. These zombies. So these are the only zombies on the planet, or are there other zombies?
Yeah, like he owns them and he's mad when one of them is taken, so they must be a finite resource. Um, like if you could just walk out and get another one, then like there wouldn't like the drama of the story would not happen. Because really
But I
it's
mean, in the end, he does make another one.
he does, that's true. Yeah.
So it's
So
the
again,
drug
the
that.
I think that's my problem with this. I mean, it's the performances are fair enough, and the direction is interesting. I think, but I mean, it is the script here. I mean,
yeah.
uh, that's the issue.
What was this story actually interesting enough that we care about anything? I think Robert Englund, making stuff dance and boobs is enough to
Well,
sustain this hour.
let's go
I
to the
was not
nudity since
unhappy
you brought
watching
it
it.
up.
Yeah, yeah,
As
go
you
to that.
brought up the nudity, it's got lots of nudity, but it's not the high quality nudity of the previous episode.
It is not, and a lot of and a fair amount of the nudity is like women who are on their way to being featured players at the Dance of the Dead.
Yes.
They're
Yeah.
they're probably a couple of weeks away from moving up. Um,
Well, that whole club scene, I wonder what the casting call was. Amputees, freaks of all nature. If you're willing to do nudity and are missing limbs, we want you.
yeah, punk rock Burning Man, I think is what they would have written on the ad. Uh, I can shed a little light on who was responsible for what in the story wise, because I went and I read the Richard Matheson short story that this was based on, which is not a long story. It's only about a dozen pages.
Did you read it beforehand, or was it something you
No, I read after. I read it after, because I wanted an idea of. I wanted to see if it was
being a very it must have been a loose adaptation.
Very loose. Essentially, the short story is four people, including Peggy, who has never seen anything like this before and has like she's referred to as a frosh in the short story, so that's a little dated as far as terminology goes.
Yeah, I don't even know what that means.
It's American slang for freshman. Frosh week. I guess it's used more than US, but yes, frosh is the plural of freshman, I guess.
So I guess so in other words, she would have been in high school. She would have been in university then in high school.
Just meaning she's innocent, meaning that she's never experienced any of this.
There is sort of a 1950s vibe to this whole thing, on top of everything else, though. So actually, in this, that would actually have made sense. It would have made it more confusing, but it would have made sense.
Yeah, the short story was written in the 70s, I believe, and it says like it's basically the world from like a 1970s point of view. But so they're at the show and the Dance of the Dead happens and they explain why the Dance of the Dead happens. That's the whole story. So there's no family backstory. There's nothing about the blood.
No twist ending.
No twist ending. The twist ending is that the dance happens. So it's interesting that the dance is introduced quite early and like it's in the first half, and then things keep ramping up.
Wanting to turn that into a full 15-minute show.
Well, I mean, what's interesting to me is that I can see making. I mean, Twilight Zone was always based on things as short as that, but it's the way that it was expanded was like really the big choice, like to add in the family drama and have a long lead up of her in the small town and like time that could have been spent explaining more of how they got to this, like how the world got there.
Half of the film is them driving and doing drugs.
Well,
in the middle of the episode, they're just driving and doing drugs forever.
A lot of the driving dialogue is in the short story.
Okay, maybe they just needed a better actor for that driving scene, because the best character, the best friend character, who does nothing in the story, by the way, he talks a lot, and they hired the worst actor in this thing to perform all this. He's a really long scene, and he is horrible.
He's
totally out of it.
Rough. Yeah, not his finest work, I gotta say. I mean, I just got to assume, honestly.
It may just be his finest work. I recognize him.
Yeah, he was a series regular on Fringe, and working actor in Vancouver stuff. Supernatural and
it's pretty much everybody. I mean, in all of these, it seems like the male lead, I didn't look him up, but I mean, the female lead, I did. She was, in fact, only 16 when she did this part. Which she's playing 16, and she actually was 16. So that's right there blew my mind, because it made me go, "Oh, I shouldn't have been thinking." I just so used to assuming that she's 45.
You may have had some impure thoughts, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I feel bad. I feel dirty.
You just don't charity, and we'll call it even.
Yeah. She's probably best known for being on the reboot of 90210.
Oh wow, that's
years ago there.
Respectable credit there. The guy that played Box, the yammering not great guy, he had just come off of, he was in Halloween Resurrection, His screen credit is Letter Sweater Guy.
I actually remember that character. I'm not even kidding. Now that you say it, like I knew his face.
Oh man.
Wow.
All right. What else can we say about this bad boy?
Let's actually
I
talk
do like
about the direction.
I do like the way that the bar scenes are shot, and I think that's really that's the meat of this story, as long as it takes to get there. But it does have that. It feels like the way the '80s saw like punk clubs, like the people in them, and it's interesting that it's it is a burlesque show, and um, I found myself partway through trying to figure out the monetizing system of this club.
Yeah, there is that.
uh, but we'll give away that the purpose of getting the blood is just for him to do the introduction to the shows. He does like 2 or 3 of these a night, and he spits up blood as part of the introduction. That's the only reason they're getting this blood. Like that's.
But I thought
that's
I thought that the blood was required the corpses to come back alive was required fresh blood.
Does it say that?
It implies it heavily.
Well, see, I
they're
thought
they're no good.
nothing...
They're no this blood is no good. Their performance isn't as good. Things like that.
Well, he says he owes his audience, but he says that the thickness of the blood is important. So it's the visual aspect of the blood is what he's talking about. What do you, Nick? What did you take away from that part?
Well, as I said earlier, the whole blood thing on stage, I thought that was an improv thing.
It's a well-planned improv, just like all the best.
I thought he was actually spitting up blood, and he was drinking the blood that he was buying to somehow reinvigorate himself. And that was real blood, his real blood that he was cupping out on stage.
I think that's a great sign.
I have a different take than everybody, but I think you're right. Now, he did talk about his patrons and like that, but while watching it, I thought he was
that's because he needed to give them a good dance.
I could be convinced of any of these theories. It's so thin within the story. For something that they spend quite a lot of time on at the beginning.
Let's face it, Toby Hooper here, I am sure his attraction to what was going on in this, he wanted the major set piece.
Yeah.
And everything else was let's chew up the scenery, and who the freak cares about having it make sense, which is a great thing about Toby Hooper. For me, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is his best film. And that, I mean, it's just, you just get to one crazy scenario after another crazy scenario, and who cares about the, connecting pieces?
He has some impressive films, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is quite brilliant. But I mean, I think most people would consider the only masterpiece in his catalog would be the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and other than that, it's just really good films. So I mean, that's an interesting choice, Nick, that you say that that's your that you consider that to be his best work.
Oh no, Leatherface fucking in a chainsaw is about the most brilliant piece of cinematic I have ever seen. I fucking love that scene.
All right, let's get into it. Where does Leatherface? Okay, you got your Jason, your big three. Your Jason, your Michael Myers, your Freddy. Is Leatherface number 4, or is it Pinhead, or Chucky, or Ghostface, or where does he sit?
I think actually 4 is appropriate.
What are you calling the category? Is it slashers, or is it just like bad guys? Like, how broad is it?
Horror bad guys.
Horror bad guys. We're bad people. We've got a female. We've got a non-gender binary Pinhead now. I mean, Pinhead was always more of an aesthetic. Like he's so recognizable for obvious reasons. But as a character, there's not much to him. Like
No, I mean in the first one he's just a Cenobite. I think
yeah,
it's just
he's
his
not even
look that took off.
yeah.
I don't think he of himself is that interesting of a thing. Any one of them you could have blown off as like the face of the Hellraiser universe.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that he has a proper face, as you say. You need someone who can emote and talk, and most of the Cenobites can't because the design is so non-human. No, so non-human. Yeah. It's tough. I mean, someone would put Jigsaw up there.
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah.
But once again, you don't really have a true face of Jigsaw. I mean, you have the puppet and you have the main guy, and then
the puppet's pretty iconic though.
Yeah, I think the puppet and
pig as well.
Well, I mean, some of them have the challenge. I mean, Ghostface, for example, from the Scream movies, also, I mean, very iconic, very recognizable. But that it's spoiler, it's not always the same person. It doesn't. I don't know if you've seen the 6 or 7 Scream movies, but just so you know, the twist is that it's not always the same person. But I think that knocks him down in the ranking, him or her sometimes. Yeah, I think
I'm leaning Leatherface.
I think yeah, I mean I think
I don't see Chucky being ahead of Leatherface.
That's a tough one. I think Leatherface, as he has some of the same drawbacks that that Pinhead does. Of he's not that defined, like he, especially in the first film, it takes a long time for him to show up, and there's not a lot of there's not a lot of business with him. Like he basically just kills people in the house. I read an interesting article about slashers, and not all of these folks qualify as a slasher, and the lack of motivation is key to a proper slasher. And Leatherface almost does have a arts and crafts motivation.
I mean, he predates slashers though, 1974, right?
He does, yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna say anything against Texas Chainsaw because it is the granddaddy. It's it's your text. It's the.
So what about Hooper's actual? Where does Hooper fit in? I mean, Carpenter and Craven and Romero and.
Yeah, I think, as you said, that he doesn't have that many great works. Like, I mean, you like Carpenter, like you could be watching Carpenter stuff for a week and not get outside of the great works. He, like, Hooper just never seemed to catch. Like, I don't know if he ever became bankable enough as himself. I mean, Texas Chainsaw.
He would have, though, if that persistent rumor about him not directing Poltergeist.
I think that probably hurt him a lot.
That hurt him a lot there.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, the stuff he did after, he never really, he did, some cool TV stuff. He was like, his stuff's always good. I always liked his stuff. But I'm looking at like Life Force, Invaders from Mars, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 were like the spread, and also the Billy Idol Dancing with Myself music video, which I did not know that.
Now, what segment of the Twilight Zone movie did he do?
I don't believe he did any of those.
No, I don't believe he did anything in that.
No, I thought he was one of the 3 directors.
No, it was Landis, Joe Dante, Spielberg did a segment. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's the 3.
Yeah, he did co-create Dark Skies, the TV show. And he did a lot of like this kind of thing. Like he did a Tales from the Crypt. He did a Freddy's Nightmares. He did an Amazing Stories. Like he did this kind of thing of single episodes of stuff. But yeah, unfortunately, he just never, like, maybe he never got out of the shadow of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
It might be that. I mean, it might be, and maybe that's why Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is so vastly different.
Yeah.
It's trying to, I mean, more of a comedy than a horror in many ways.
Yeah, and I think
It's
that
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. And in
Yeah,
this episode, I think he did it like when he's at his best, there's a surreal feeling to his movies and like an anger to the camera work.
mm.
I think a true anger, and I think there was some of that in this at times. I think he did the best he could do with the material he had.
Yeah, and you never know why the other choices. Like you never know if that's, the producers wanted something specific or the script just like like I mean, because they were building these around a director and a writer, the like where the middle ground is between those two things. Um, and in some ways, the stuff that's added is all character stuff. Like it is really building our lead into a like she is the most complete character in the story, and as I said in the short story, she's not really a character. She's just like she's your entry because she hasn't seen this before, and things need to be explained to her.
Yeah. So yeah, we never even mentioned that the dancer turns out to be your sister.
Well, that's
Or
because that's
maybe
one of the twists.
Because that's one of the twists.
Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, we're not highly recommending this one anyway. It's an interesting piece of. I think it's an interesting capsule.
It is one hell of a fun watch because, as we said, none of the entertaining bits are part of the plot. I mean,
yeah.
It's an amputee punk bar with Robert Englund cheering up the scenery.
Yeah, that'll
really is Robert Englund.
Yeah, you
really
told me right there. That's an hour's worth of entertainment.
Yeah, for sure.
You don't need it. You don't need the story to find this a good little hour.
All right. Well, I give it a 5.4 out of 10.
I'm gonna give it a 6.9 for for his assistance.
This is a definitive 6.14 for me.
All right. Well, we are
classic example of a 6.14.
We are continuing
Toby Hooper will show up again. This is the first of two that he did. So
terrific.
We will see if the next one is a little more popular with us.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that was Dance of the Dead, third episode, and so we're doing these Masters of Horror as a quick return to the Cult Film Showdown. These episodes are out of competition, so they will not show up on the Octagon. Which, speaking of the Octagon, if you go to wetalkpodcast.com, that's the home of the Octagon, where you can find out our search for the ultimate B movie. And this is kind of this is our spring training episodes, getting back in the zone. And yeah, exhibition season is what you said. Yeah, I'll agree with that. So you can find us, Cult Film Showdown, on Instagram. You can support us on Patreon and support as I said, the work that we're doing. Where we do this so you don't have to. We Talk Podcasts is on Twitter and they are on Facebook. And there's a lot of great podcasts on the We Talk network at wetalkpodcast.com. And our next episode will be episode 4 of the first season, called Jennifer. So we'll be back shortly with that. And any last words, Nick and Jack?
6.14 is awfully specific.
Well, I mean, once you start rating things out of 1,000, then you really got to drill down. I mean, I would like to know the difference. Like, what changed it from a 6.13 to a 6.14 for you?
Quite simply, it was calling the Fallout Bliss.
Nice.
Is it Blitz or Bliss?
Bliss.
With a Z?
possible it was both at various times.
I thought it was a double F.
I'm pretty sure it was Blitz. Blitz.
And
Well,
it's
ask the guy
and
who
it's,
read it. I watched the damn thing.
it's neither in the short story. It's Annie. It's Annie's. And I get why they would have changed that. It's it's an anti-personnel thing. All right, let's wrap this baby up, and you'll hear us next time with Jennifer.
I'm looking it up now. I think it's on. Yeah, Blizz. It's neither.
So it's neither.
It's Blizz.